Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Well, it's a time of year when loneliness feels worse than ever, not least for the 1 million elderly people who say they go without speaking to a friend or relative for as long as a month. Today, the health watchdog NICE issued new guidance to help people cope with isolation. Join a choir, they suggest, take up hobbies, read to children in schools. Earlier this week, David Cameron hosted a lunch at Downing Street to raise awareness about the issue. And the film we made, showing two elderly people describing the sheer bleakness of being alone, has now been watched by 12 million people online. We've been back to find out what happened to Roy and Margaret since that broadcast, and as our social affairs editor Jackie Long has been finding out, there have been some changes since we were last there.
The room's just empty.
If you go out, you come back, and you come back to an empty house, you know, and it's loneliness again.
Life when it's lived alone. Two simple stories of loneliness and isolation. Since we spoke to Roy and Margaret back in October, their interviews have been watched by more than 12 million people online, with charities reporting a surge of interest from people keen to help. But has anything changed for 86-year-old Roy? When we went to see him yesterday, he was on his way out. It's been 30 years since he retired from his job as a security guard at a local factory. But touched after hearing his story, he's been invited back.
Something smells nice.
It does, doesn't it?
Now guest of honour at the company Christmas lunch.
Welcome to your factory uniforms.
Yes.
And folks dressed up.
It's nice to be sitting with people, you know, and eating, rather than being at a table on your own, you know, because when you have to cook yourself, you know, we sit down, you think, well, you know, why bother?
Merry Christmas!
Merry Christmas! Happy New Year! Merry Christmas!
Roy has since been chosen to launch the local paper's campaign against loneliness and to raise money for Age UK's phone befriending service.
You've had a little touch of celebrity locally. What's that been like?
Very, very exciting. Yes, I'm very honoured. But I feel as though I'm one of the royal family.
So you like doing the jigsaws?
We're doing jigsaws, yes.
For Margaret, who was married for 67 years, looking back is often easier than living in the present.
We'd sit in this room and, you know, perhaps we'd have one each. Yes. Oh, I don't think we were ever apart.
Life for her is still painfully quiet, with a few odd exceptions.
Has it made any difference to you?
Well, I get you, come and see me.
And what about the neighbours or the friends who saw the film?
Oh, well, the ones that cut the grass, Trevor, he said to me, if you want an agent, he said, I'll volunteer. He said 75% of it.
She says she's glad that by being honest about her own isolation, she might have helped other people. But some loneliness will never go away.
When you look ahead now, what would you like to happen just to make your life a little bit less lonely? What would make your life a little bit less lonely?
I just don't know. Nothing can replace my husband. No. No, when I stop and think other poor souls far worse off than I am.
Yes, because I'm fully booked up for Christmas, you see.
You've got a busy diary now.
Yes.
Roy's been invited to share Christmas with his friend Emma and her family, but he worries for those who have absolutely no one.
So to anyone watching, what would you say? What's your message to people coming up to Christmas? What should they do?
Make time, really, because they've got it to come. And they will know then what loneliness is like.
Christmas.
While Christmas may bring loneliness into sharper focus, for many, it's a desperate problem all year round. And that, say campaigners, should be a worry for us all.
Well, joining us now, Professor Gillian Lang, the Director of Health and Social Care at NICE, and Sophie Andrews, Chief Executive of Silverline, which provides a helpline for the elderly. Do you think this is an entirely new problem, or, I mean, is it about the way we live now?
It's not an entirely new problem, but as the population is getting older, we're all living much longer lives than we used to. We do see scenarios of more older people living in their homes on their own. It's a particular problem once one partner has died, as we've just seen on the clip. And so just to say, I'm really pleased to be here to raise awareness of the NICE guideline, because although loneliness makes you feel really bad, makes you feel rubbish, it's actually a risk for your physical health as well. And we know that people who are lonely are more likely to suffer from serious mental health problems, to be at risk of dementia, and to have physical problems. So it's a really important issue.
Sophie Andrews, and one of the problems is that the British are rather reticent about calling up somebody they don't really know very well. And neighbours don't know it. Very often there are probably lots of people watching this who have no idea who their neighbours are.
Exactly. I think on the first point, we're dealing at Silverline with an older generation, stiff upper lip, have survived at least one world war, a generation of people that don't want to go to their doctors, don't want anything on their records to say they might be lonely, and are very afraid of even admitting to family members. So in the clip there, obviously the lady who was married for 67 years, we have a lot of callers who call us who've lost a partner, who have children, but are very afraid to say to their children they feel lonely, in case the children think there's some sort of failure on their part.
Well, I mean, one of the nice recommendations today is join a choir.
Yeah.
Or alternatively, play bingo, whatever it is. But even that, you can see in the two people we particularly looked at, I mean, one obviously found it easy to go back to his workplace and the rest of it. But it's a big step, isn't it?
I think before you even get to that step, the challenge is finding lonely older people who are isolated, because if you go to the community centre and put the poster up about the lunch club, the people in the community centre are the people who are out of their own homes. So I believe the front door can become a barrier. It actually, self-confidence erodes over time, and before people know it, they realise the front door is a barrier, and they don't want to step over that threshold.
Well, the front door is a barrier, and joining a choir, for example, I mean, it's a huge step for somebody who's extremely lonely. Certainly to break out and join people. Heavens, who are these people? And they don't know me.
Well, just a couple of points to say that some of the recommendations in our guideline are for health and social care professionals who do have contact with people fairly routinely. So we're alerting them to risk factors to help identify people who might need some support. And then, as you say, there are barriers to getting out, to feeling lacking in confidence. So,
but are you suggesting, for example, that healthcare workers might take them along to something and introduce them to it? I mean, that again is labour intensive. They're under pressure, these workers. How's it going to happen?
Well, some of the recommendations for local authorities are to think about providing support, providing transport where needed. So because that can be a barrier to getting out. Of course, we're all friends and neighbours as well. We all might have an opportunity to help. But other recommendations for local government are to think about the activities that might be on offer. Working with charities is clearly an important step to helping provide those activities. But a range is crucial, because people can get people are all different, aren't they?
Yeah.
You've lived a long life, you're going to have different interests, and so to provide those options are crucial.
But I'm thinking of the street in which, or even the rural place, in which this loneliness occurs.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking of people living anywhere near and kind of knowing there is somebody down there,
Yep.
how they make the first approach. Because even arriving at that barrier that is the front door
Yeah.
can be intimidating to the poor lonely individual inside.
I mean,
How do you handle it?
well, definitely, I think at the same time we're talking about scams and we're saying to people, be careful about strangers at your door, don't open the door, don't answer the phone, make sure you've done those checks, which is quite right. We're moving towards a society where people are afraid of knocking at the door of someone in their own street
So
and
what do
saying,
you
how
do?
are you? Well, we need to overcome that, we need to break that barrier. When we're busy and we're in the supermarket and all rushing through the till, we need to stop and say, actually, why don't we talk to that person who's in the queue in front of us? It's simple changes, it's not, these aren't huge things that we need to do, but if we all took notice of people around us, took that time to knock the door, to say hello to people, take a bit of time, that would make a big difference.
So it's not just healthcare workers you're aiming at, you're trying to get society to respond in a new way.
Yeah, I think we all have responsibility to look out for people in our communities who might be isolated, to think that we haven't seen them recently. Should we go and knock on the door and say hello? Because a familiar face is going to be less
And
threatening.
after you've said hello,
After you've said hello.
yes, but what next,
Yeah, well, in terms of what next, the key bit of the guideline is let's make sure there's some information available about a range of activities that are on offer, because often when you're older, you're not internet savvy, you haven't got all the computer equipment to hand, you don't know what's
Right.
available, so having that information is key.
Professor Lang, and thank you very much, Sophie Andrews, too.
I've been getting away with it all